So, hello everyone.
Yes, okay, we can see it.
Okay, okay. My name is Adriana Unger, and I am a PhD student in Information Systems at University of São Paulo. As a background, I have an engineer degree and a master degree in industrial engineering, but also a professional experience in BPM, business process management, and consulting experience in the law field. As a PhD student, I'm a member of the Process Mining Research Group at University of São Paulo, which is a group of researchers interested in the development of the process mining field. And my advisor, Marcelo Fantinato, and my co-advisor, Sarajani Perez, they are the leading researchers of this research group. My work specifically is about the application of process mining to the law field. And here today, I will present this paper, which is a preliminary result of an early research project on process mining for legal compliance. And I propose a new approach to access legal compliance in organizations using a process mining technique named conformance check. And this paper presents the design of an IT artifact that supports the execution of a preliminary controlled experiment that will evaluate this proposed approach. The artifact design make up one design cycle of this broader design science research project on process mining for legal compliance. So, talking about legal compliance, which is my motivation, in the last decades, there are a growing number of applicable laws that has increased the regulatory pressure over business operation of several organizations around the world. And in this context, many solutions to support assessment of legal compliance have emerged based on the application of new technologies. For example, we can see here an overview of the innovative ecosystems of startups that are named law techs here in Brazil and in the US. And we can see that in this environment, legal compliance plays an important role in the innovation and the development of new tools and new technologies dedicated to assess legal compliance. There are some experts that say that there is a trend named Compliance 4.0, which is similar to the Industrial Revolution, the fourth Industrial Revolution, and is related to this trend of new technologies, applications for to manage compliance inside the organizations. Well, since my approach is based on process mining, I will take some time to explain what process mining is. So it's a new field of study that enables event logs that are registered executions of activities inside organizations. These event logs, they are registered in information systems, and process mining allows that these event logs are mined into process models that help to understand operation processes inside organizations. In this way, process mining is considered the bridge between the process science, which is based on the BPM framework, business process management, and to bridge this BPM science to this process science to data science disciplines. The process models, they play a dominant role in BPM because they tend to chains of activities that produce outcomes that add value to organizations and their customers. And the main innovation of process mining is related to the automatic discovery of business process models based on these event logs. The goal of this is to represent the reality of the execution of business processes instead of discovering process models manually. And then when these process models are discovered, they can then be analyzed and improved The process discovery algorithms, they build process models from event logs, which review the sequence of activities that are performed during the process. And the process analysis can then be applied to support performance improvements of these processes, such as identifying bottlenecks, reducing costs, lead times, and things like that. Well, in my approach to assess legal compliance, I apply another modality of process mining, which is the conformance check. Conformance check involves comparing a reference process model to the event logs in order to verify if a certain behavior in the real world is in accordance to a previously defined agreement. So in this regard, process mining enabled conformance check is a promising approach that allows continuous monitoring of legal compliance based on the comparison of normative and observed behavior of business processes. This is important that using process mining conformance check, it allows a change in the paradigm of compliance management because most large organizations specifically, they usually adopt international standards, so such as ISO, to implement compliance management systems. And to support these systems, they perform conventional audits that usually are periodic. They involves analyzing sampling of information and retroactive documentation. And if we use process mining instead, if we use the conformance check, we could, for example, monitor the compliance in real time, even in real time, if we have the continuous generation of event logs and analysis. And we can also analyze the complete log, the complete register of all the executions that were performed inside an organization, not just sampling, and to have a measure of the conformance rates throughout time, and not only periodically, or even applying other process mining techniques, we could prevent some non-conformities that would occur. Well, another property of my approach is that instead of using imperative process models, which are more common, such as the one that I showed before, this type of imperative process model, they describe a step-by-step work of each activity that occur during a business process. I am proposing to use declarative process models. These declarative process models, they allow the specification of a process in a loosely structured way as a set of constraints of rules that should be followed during the execution of the business process. So some declarative process models can be expressed by declare, which is a declarative language grounded in temporal logic. And I believe that process mining conformance check algorithms and tools using declarative process models offer a promising framework to verify legal compliance, because this type of representation of process model is more similar to how legal requirements are defined. I also included in my approach the use of the computable law framework. What I want to do is to use the techniques to formalize legal rules into compliance requirements of business process models. And I want to use this set of legal rules as code using the computational models of law based on ontologies dedicated to specific law fields. And these approaches of computable law, they enable the application of semantic web technologies to model legal documents, allowing them to be consumed by electronic service as machine consumable legislation. The representation of this legal knowledge in the business rules domain can be achieved using, for example, legal rule ML. And I consider this Robaldo et al. Framework of computable law, and also the input and output logic system for the legal domain, in which the computational law offers semantic web-based technologies, allowing the use of logic to formalize constitutive and prescriptive rules written in natural language as machine consumable legislation. I also consider the governatory and SADC frameworks, but in the case of this framework, it considers a business process, an imperative business process in place, where semantic annotations of these models can be done and then be compared to a rule base as a reference. This framework considers that it aims to guide the design of processes that are complained by design, and consider that the runtime checking are implemented by workflow engines. In my case, I consider that the underlying business process, they are not known. I suggest using declarative business process models as a reference, and they will be compared directly to the event logs to apply conformance checking and then access legal compliance of the execution of the process itself without knowing the business process in advance. Well, the research goal of my broader research project is to demonstrate that this legal compliance approach based on law formalization and conformance check can support legal compliance assessments using these declarative business process models. But here, as a preliminary step of the design cycle of my research, I am proposing an artifact that could be tested under laboratory conditions to assess the feasibility of this design idea. Considering the design science research, there are some practical and theory cycles that are executed, and this artifact design would be the first design cycle that would then be subject to experiment. Talking about my proposed approach, it represents the broader conformance check for legal compliance, in which I have the normative model, the specific APIs to extract structured and unstructured data from the legal domain in the form of event logs. And then the logical representation of laws would complete the environment so that the discovered process models could be checked against the legal requirements. So my artifact design, it was restricted to a small experiment so that we could validate the proposed approach. This restricted scope involves the unauthorized access of personal data subject to data protection regulation. The business IT context is composed by information systems that log the execution of business process related to protection data, to protection of personal data, and database audit trails that register information about data access. Mapping between the legislation scope and business process is presumably known, and the artifact comprises a normative declarative process based on the DAPRECO project coded rules about unauthorized personal data access, a synthetic event log based on data extracted from the business information systems, and a process mining enabled conformance check tool named Room to access legal compliance. So I will describe each component of this artifact, but I am also considering in purpose two conflicting law cases that I also took as an example from the DAPRECO paper, in which case law one from Italy, which considers unauthorized access counting as a data breach, and unauthorized access, another case law considered that it does not count as a data breach, inspired by different court interpretations of GDPR on unauthorized access. So I will consider these two normative settings to artificially provoke a situation of a compliant or a non-compliant in my experiment. So my normative process model of these artifacts are being built upon rewriting legal rule ML statements of the declare into declare language, considering these two normative settings and resulting in two declarative process models. I am considering the DAPRECO knowledge base from Livio Robaldo, and the conformance checking of each of these models against the process, the event logs, shall produce respectively legally non-compliant and compliant results. I also will generate this synthetic event log, considering a typical personal data protection management process that was modeled in this picture. And I will use a process log generation, the generator named BIMP, as a process execution scenario that will be based on this model. This synthetic log file will then be merged with a corresponding database audit trail containing data access information during the same time frame, and the case ID considered for the process mining purpose will be the personal data identification, uniquely related to the database record ID. And the synthetic event will be generated containing events regarding authorized access. And the purpose is that I will use these synthetic logs now in this small experiment, but in my broader research project, I intend to use real logs from real organizations. I will also use the rule miner tool from Alman et al. To complete this artifact design. This was chosen because it has many functionalities, a visual editor for declarative process models, and a conformance checking environment, which indeed includes data constraints that I will need in my case, together with control flow constraints. So these declarative rooms also have a declarative process model editor, in which both versions of the normative process model of the artifact can be defined using the declare language. The room conformance check will take as input the event log and one of the normative process models at a time, return activations, violations, and fulfillments of each log, of the log, of each constraint in the model. The conformance check results in room, they are presented in groups representing the results for a specific trace or a specific constraint. So legal compliance of the event log will then be assessed based on the verification of this observed behavior, namely the event logs, and the business process in accordance to the normative setting being considered. Well, as a conclusion, I remarked that this law as code approach offers a symbolic AI approach which is more suitable, in my opinion, to the legal domain. If I compare to other solutions that apply text mining techniques which independ on the legal content of the norms. This proposed approach relies on an interdisciplinary and integrative research approach to design an innovative solution that combines techniques from computer science and the law areas. And furthermore, the proposed approach can be compared to existing business process compliance management frameworks. And although many of them adopt semantic techniques to verify compliance of business process, they originally do not consider automatic discovery of business process models, which is what process mining proposes to do, or even real-time conformance checking as provided by these process mining techniques. I expect that the right combination of these techniques included in this design of each component of the artifact leads to the demonstration of the process mining for legal compliance approach, resulting in a novel legal compliance checking framework for process models in organizations. Later, the empirical evaluation of this artifact during the execution of the experiment, which is still being prepared, may reveal other barriers to the use of process mining enabled conformance. So it's also my goal to map these limitations to this approach to check legal compliance, and also to use this to refine the design of the artifact for the next design science research cycles. And not even considering, oh,
Last minute, please.
okay, I'm finishing. Even considering the early stage of my research project and the limited scope of this experiment, the proposed approach is expected to that it can be generalized to other legislation and applied to different business processes domain. So I thank you very much for being here and to present this project here in the ICAO conference. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Adriana, for your presentation, great presentation. And now I'm going to read. We have some questions, okay?
Okay.
According to the author, the logic of legal rules can be formalized as a code. How does that occur? How does that occur? I mean, how can a legal rule be formalized as a code?
Great question. Well, I'm pretty sure that many works presented here in the ICAO main conference, they suggest there are many ways of doing that, but my approach relies on the University of Bologna approach of formalization of legal codes based on XML, using frameworks such as the Comontoso, and using languages that are specific to the formalization of legal codes, such as Legal Rule ML, and also in the use of legal ontologies such as Pronto, which I am using in this work, and is a privacy ontology specific to support formalizing of legal rules related to personal data protection. So as a more broad answer, there are many ways to do that. And ICAO has a lot of works about that. And in my approach, I adopted a specific approach.
Okay, great. We have two more questions until now. Would the model be applicable to principles or standards, or only to rules in a strict sense?
Well, there are lots of works in the business process management compliance field that consider compliance in a more broad view. So if we take these approaches, these frameworks, and we could, for example, use a similar approach to check compliance, not only legal compliance, but compliance to any normative setting. In my case, I am focusing my work in the legal compliance because I understand that the legal field is different from the other ones. They have uh, special properties of the legal rules. And I understand that the legal rules, they have a nature that is different from a pure text concerning other domains. So in my case, I am focusing on this legal compliance, but I understand that I know that there are other more general frameworks.
Okay. Um, Another question. Not all legal requirements have a procedural nature. It's according to you. So, to what kind of legal requirements do you refer here?
Well, in the case of data protection legislation, there are some requirements that are very procedural in a way that you must do something before and then you have to do another. You have some prescriptive rules, sorry, that in the norm tells you that, for example, the personal data must be collected and then treated and then deleted. So you have a sequence of activities in this case, and that's why I also chose the data protection legal domain to design this experiment. But I understand that there are other legal rules that don't have this sequential, this procedural nature. In this case, I understand that checking legal compliance will demand other techniques, maybe to be used jointly to process mining. But I want to use this experiment to map these limitations, and to also define the richness of my proposed approach. I hope I have answered the question.